What's up everyone, Alex here. When Fantasian came out on Apple Arcade a few years back, JRPG fans who owned Apple devices, like myself, were able to experience a game that not only harkened back to a classic era, but also innovated in surprising ways. But moreover, this also signaled the end of an era, as this would be the last time that famed game director Hironobu Sakaguchi would be producing alongside Nobuo Uematsu, who has since said that this would be the last full game soundtrack he'll ever compose. And in case you didn't know, Sakaguchi and Uematsu's collaborations span as far back as their time at Squaresoft in the mid-80s, which led to the creation of the Final Fantasy series. So if you think of Fantasian as their final collective swan song, then you're now beginning to understand why this game resonates so much for me as both a gamer and a fan of their work. And when you consider that the long-awaited release of Fantasian Neo Dimension is all of these and so much more, it's hard not to feel excited for JRPG fans who have been waiting to play this game for such a long time. At its heart, Fantasian Neo Dimension is a turn-based JRPG that features fixed camera angles, random battles, and a world map. The game was originally divided into two parts when it was first released on Apple Arcade, but this release comes with both parts and integrated seamlessly as one full title. The footage you're seeing right now is from the PS5 version of the game, and I'd like to thank Square Enix for providing this game code. Fantasian Neo Dimension puts you in the role of Leo, who awakens in a strange world that's being encroached upon by a mechanical plague that's slowly consuming everything it touches. As you go on your journey, recovering Leo's lost memories along the way, you'll unearth the mysterious truth behind this dark miasma, leading to a discovery that will shape your understanding of the world around you. Throughout your adventure, you'll be battling monsters and creatures of various shapes and sizes in classic turn-based combat. Fantasian's take on this style of gameplay comes with a unique convenience. You have two commands readily accessible to you, which consists of your normal attack and the last secondary action you used for that character, which acts as a quick way to use the same action. Of course, you can still choose different actions by going to skills or items and selecting something different, and this will then become the default secondary action for the next turn. One thing that I absolutely love about Fantasian's battle system is the way that skills have different trajectories, allowing you to hit multiple enemies. For example, Leo's Slash can hit all enemies along a straight line, while Kina's Holy Magic can be curved to hit enemies in an arc. Much like other modern JRPGs, you can conveniently see the turn order of every party member and enemy on screen, as well as have a choice to scan for enemy weaknesses, their susceptibility to status ailments, in addition to what items you'll get, whether it's stolen or dropped, after battle. Progression is your typical experience point leveling system, with characters learning new skills when reaching certain levels. Considering these details, it might be easy to think of Fantasian's combat system as by the numbers, with very little innovation. However, the game has one important mechanic that makes its combat feel even more fun and engaging. And that has everything to do with the game's Dimension system, which is a great solution to many of our random encounter woes. Consider this. Have you ever wished that you could delay fighting random encounters later when you wanted to or needed to? That's what the Dimension system does. By turning on Dimension, any enemies you encounter while on the field won't interrupt your exploration. Instead, these enemies will be sent to the Dimension, where you can choose to face these enemies at any time. There are only 3 caveats to this. First, if you encounter a new enemy, you're forced to fight them first before you're able to bank them. Secondly, you may only bank a total of 30 enemies at once. So if the Dimension exceeds this capacity, you'll have no choice but to face all of the enemies in the Dimension plus the ones that you've encountered. And finally, certain enemies encountered during a story sequence or dungeon can't be banked at all, which, of course, includes bosses. Apart from convenience, you'll want to bank as many enemies as possible because of the skills I mentioned earlier. It's just more cost-effective to use these skills to take out whole groups of enemies while they're clumped together on the battlefield, which you can certainly do in Dimension. Additionally, random power-ups pop up when facing enemies this way, giving you a variety of buffs like attack ups or straight-up steal turns in combat. The fact that no other random encounter-based JRPG has implemented something similar is baffling to me, as being able to face enemies at your own time makes playing Fantasian Neo Dimension a much more pleasant experience than your typical JRPG. I should also point out that Fantasian Neo Dimension comes with an easier difficulty, though if you're a veteran JRPG player, I highly recommend playing this on its original harder difficulty to really appreciate these systems. Thanks to Sakaguchi's experience replaying Final Fantasy VI in 2018, he was inspired to work on something that brought back the feeling of playing classic JRPGs, which led to the creation of Fantasian. That said, Sakaguchi no longer commanded an army of artists that could create elaborate CG environments that were the hallmark of Final Fantasy's golden era on the PlayStation. Sakaguchi then came up with the idea of 3D scanning handcrafted dioramas that were specifically made for the game to serve as its backgrounds. The end result is an environment that feels just as rich as any background created with computer graphics. Sadly, these environments are limited by the resolution that they were originally scanned in. This is to say that while the 4K option is a very nice addition, some environments look like they have less detail than others. The game's story, penned by Sakaguchi, includes plenty of the narrative elements that old-school Final Fantasy fans may be familiar with, complete with nods of previous games that he's worked on. As I played through the game and experienced more of the story, I noticed numerous parallels between Leo's desire to remember his past to that of Sakaguchi's want to invoke the spirit of RPGs from a bygone era. Yet, the story isn't about the condemnation of the new. It's about how we can carve a new path into the future, independent, though inspired, by the past. It's a wonderful sentiment buried deep within a classic JRPG storyline. And after I lamented the lack of voice acting in my review of its original release years ago, I'm happy to say that all of Fantasian's story cutscenes and visual novel-inspired sequences are voiced in English and Japanese, which greatly adds to the experience of playing the game. These visual novel sequences, called memories, feature moving text with different degrees of presentation, which will remind you a lot of Lost Odyssey if you played it. But all of this talk about its presentation wouldn't be complete without mentioning Uematsu's soundtrack. His work in Fantasian is a reaction to his realization that he had inadvertently helped define what JRPG soundtracks were supposed to sound like. And in his desire to break from the mold, Uematsu's compositions here feature more improvisation than his previous works, showing more of the famed composer's personality than ever. The combination of Uematsu's songs playing alongside Sakaguchi's narrative, with voice acting exclusive to this version, elevates Fantasian Neo Dimension to a totally different level for me. Perhaps it's fitting then that the song accompanying this review is named Fellowship, as it paints a portrait of Sakaguchi and Uematsu's time together as collaborators, spanning 3 decades of games, with Fantasian Neo Dimension putting the final cap to an incredible, lifelong collaboration. It might be strange for some people to hear that my review of Fantasian Neo Dimension is closely tied to its creators, but I've always believed that a game's quality is also represented by the passions of the people involved. And whether you take these things into account or not, it doesn't change the fact that Fantasian Neo Dimension is as much a story about fighting for our future as it is a story about longing for simpler times. There's a delicate balance to be had when towing the line between nostalgia and innovation, and Fantasian Neo Dimension manages to deliver an experience that is just as compelling as any modern JRPG. Its soul might feel old, but it feels very genuine. And anyone choosing to join Leo on this journey will find a captivating adventure through worlds beyond our own.